Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Sorry for the delay. For those who are checking us out live on YouTube, I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters, Gail from NYFights.com, Daniel from 4 Boxing News, and the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Well, hopefully all of our listeners have, if they're listening on Monday Live, you got up early, you've had your nap, and now we can talk about it tonight on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report.
Absolutely. For those who are not watching Monday Night Football, including um, my Carolina Panthers just sticking out the joint offensively against the Saints, or watching my other team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing the Cleveland Browns, and want to listen to some live boxing talk. Welcome. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc., discussing all things boxing. The motto wins: when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the site is the place to go to. Excuse me, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with any comments, questions, etc., you can do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you can find links to where to catch anything Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page, links to where you can find Pound for Pound Box Report all over podcast platforms, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Google Podcast, be it Apple Podcasts. Any and everywhere where you listen to your favorite podcast, you should be able to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report. If you wish to donate, got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link on the page on the site. Excuse me. Wouldn't matter if it was $1, $2, $5. If you have some leftover coin laying around and you wish to contribute, we would certainly welcome it. Help the overall production behind the show. Last but certainly not least, if you check the bottom portion of the Pound for Pound Box Report page, please check out my fitness link to Body, BODI, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand. As we're hitting the last third of the year, on the verge of fall, and you want to get your body right, heading into the holidays, please check out Body. Fitness programs for any and all suitable goals and interests. If you're looking to lift weights, please check out programs like Lift 4, Lift More, Body Beast. If you're looking for a specific morning fitness program, please check out programs like Morning Meltdown. If you're looking for hardcore functional workouts, please check out programs like 6 Weeks of the Work, the P90X series 1, 2, and 3. They're still up, very good, very effective. P90X in particular, if you consider yourself a serious athlete, if you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds, 6-week program consisting of 3 days a week, 3 days of boxing based cardio during the week, 2 days of resistance and weight lifting. At the very least, check out Body and take advantage of the free 14-day trial. And that is for 14 days. You will get free access to any and all programs, including the sample program of the new Chop Wood Carry Water programs that's set to hit the public masses in 2024, early 2024. But the sample program is up right now. I've been a member of Body. I have went through the program a couple of times. Very, very, it's a different kind of workout system. Not your traditional strength and cardio and functional fitness time of workout, but I liked it. I went through it a couple of times, and I would strongly suggest those checking out the sample workout and the full-time workout whenever it drops for the masses. Let's get things going. There was a fight card that we didn't talk about on last week's episode. It took place earlier today. Gail and I was able to watch it early in the morning. We will talk about that towards the end of our recap segment. But let's start with fights that took place last week on Friday. Headliner Gail was Luis Alberto Lopez defending his featherweight belt IBF version against Joet Gonzalez. Third title shot for Gonzalez. And this weird, strange in terms of how this bout went for me, right? Uh, at times throughout the fight, particularly in the championship rounds, Gail, it seemed to me that the defending champ Gonzalez, he played it too cool for school, right? It seemed like throughout the fight he could have done more. Uh, Gonzalez, on his part, fought with all the heart in the world. The champion got the decision, but to me, the fight was much closer than the scorecards indicated. What do you think of the fight, and what do you think of Lopez's performance? Did he really underestimate? I know he got the decision by a comfortable margin, but was this a case of him just underestimating him? Because the fighter that we saw against just obliterate Michael Conlon earlier this spring, the fighter that we saw go to England and beat Josh Warrington, we didn't see that last week.
Listen, Gonzalez, is a serviceable fighter. He's plenty skilled. He's always come up just that tiny bit short in championship fights. And this is third time. I'm sure he was hoping third time was the charm. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be the case for him. He poses enough resistance and enough effort so that someone like Lopez, he's got to be careful, or there is the potential of a mistake. Well, that wasn't going to happen this time. Lopez had him fairly well in hand, and I can't help but think that Lopez, like some fighters, rise to the level of their opposition. Others sometimes let down to the level of their opposition. And I think Lopez only fought absolutely as hard as he needed to in this fight. This is a bit of a stay busy fight for him. So I think that it turned out to be, just the perfect, imperfect marriage of Gonzalez just not being able to get his effort over the finish line with top talent, and Lopez saying, there is no reason to overextend myself, put myself in danger. He wants to fight guys with belts. This was a defense. He's not going to get any big prizes beating Gonzalez. So he did only what he needed to do. Do we love that as fans? No. Do I understand it from an athlete's career point of view? Yeah, I do. You don't. Lopez does not want to jeopardize a bigger fight ahead by getting cut, getting injured, or God forbid, making a mistake and losing.
I guess, and I hear you. Fair enough, but maybe it's just the old school part of me. Um, when I see a champion and I think of what it is to be a champion, they want to impress, dominate, and make a statement as often as they can, um, whenever they are in the ring. And Lopez is looking for a unification bout coming up. They mentioned Robeisy Ramirez. After the fight, he said he's all for it. Ramirez has a fight coming up. I want to say next month. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gail. Um, I'll say this in closing. I hear your point, but if he fights that way against a Robeisy Ramirez, he's not winning. He's not winning. He can fight. He can fight better than that. I want to see that the next time whenever he's in the ring next time. And I think Daniel's gone. I think Daniel's out. He maybe having some technical issues, and we'll hope to have him back in a bit. Let's move on to the next fight while you're still here, Gail. Um, we both had the pleasure of interviewing Xander Zayas, up and coming 20-year-old, now junior middleweight prospect, right? Uh, Boxing insiders have talked about his talent, um, his talent, right? And the more you see him fight, the more he's displaying that talent in the ring. I think he's just now on the cusp of coming into his own. He's ranked number 5 right now by the WBO at 154 pounds. Um, and I think Gail's along not with us as well. So I hope to have both of them back. I'll try to carry on until both of them return. Zayas coming into his own, and he fought. Um, Give me a second here. He fought Roberto Valenzuela Jr. here on the undercard of Lopez and Gonzalez. And covering the fight for 3kingsboxing.com, please check out 3kingsboxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire 3 Kings Boxing crew. The man behind 3KB2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing Talk, Bo, head of media relations, senior writer, Bakari, senior writer. I am also a senior writer for 3 Kings Boxing. Red, who does a lot of editing behind the scenes for us, and also the contributors behind the scenes. Can you hear me now, Gail?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. We have
Okay,
technical
no
issues
problem.
tonight, everybody.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I was talking about Xander Zayas, who fought on the undercard of Lopez and Gonzalez, fighting Roberto Valenzuela Jr. Fifth round stoppage it was. Uh, I mentioned how Zayas, we both had the pleasure of interviewing him. Uh, Great personality. He kind of has that it factor outside of the ring, and he's showing that it factor inside of the ring. To me, he's rounding into form. He's becoming not just a prospect, but a legitimate contender. Um, Boxing enthusiasts behind the scenes talked about he has special talent. He's just beginning to show that now. Outstanding performance, Gail.
Yeah, and he was against a sturdy veteran who was supposed to test him, take him rounds. He took him a few rounds, but not really what might have been expected. Yeah, Zayas is being brought up well. Top Rank absolutely knows what to do with their prospects, and he's a classic example of moving them along, getting them out into the community, building a fan base. They love having a Puerto Rican fighter to connect with the fans in New York and in Puerto Rico, setting up some of those Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalries. He's a good-looking kid. He's great with interviews. He understands the business of boxing outside the ring as well as inside. And he's still just 21 years old. So they don't have to be in a huge hurry with him. But a lot of fans are getting real impatient. They want to see him tested. Well, 154, there are a lot of guys that could do that. They need to be careful because setting himself up for an early loss when it isn't necessary, um, could delay his development. On the other hand, they definitely need to step him up now every time. And I'm curious whether he's going to eventually do more damage at middleweight, where the competition is very weak at middleweight right now. If he is anywhere close to being ready to move up, he could absolutely take over. He's still, as they say, getting his man strength as well. So I think in the next few years, we will really know exactly what he's all about. We're still just getting hints right now.
Absolutely. Given how young he is, given his height, right? He's what, around 6 feet. Uh and you can see the development of his body from even a year ago, 12, 18 months ago, into what you saw from him last week on Friday. To your point, he is beginning to gain some of that man strength. He's beginning to. You can see the development. You can see the muscle starting to develop in his body, from the waist up,
Yeah.
and even in the legs, right?
Yeah,
So
especially the waist
even
up.
though,
I mean, as a
right,
trainer, you must find that really interesting to watch that, and how, he needs to make sure he's developing his strength for his sport, not just for aesthetics. Some of the most skilled boxers and hardest punchers aren't really over muscled because they can't sacrifice speed for power.
he's ranked one. He's ranked number 5 by the WBO at 154. his future is probably at 160, and if not 168. Uh, the skills are starting to develop there too. You can see the confidence building every time he's in that ring. I predict that not at the end this time next year, he will be on the cusp of a world title shot. He is growing that fast from a technical, from a physical, and from a mental aspect as well. And in the future is certainly bright for him. Let's move on, Gail. Let's move on. Hopefully, we'll have Daniel back on shortly. I think he's dealing with some technical issues on his own end. The the uh the Lopez and the Zayas fights happened on Friday. On Saturday in Commerce, California, um, there was a card as well, headlined by a highly ranked lightweight, Williams Zepeda fought Mercito Gesta, who's a tough nut in the 130, 135, 140 pound weight range, right? You were able to witness this fight, Gail, and I'll leave the floor to you, give you the floor to talk about this fight and Zepeda winning by stoppage and having conversations about this fight before we hit the live button. And you were talking about how impressed you was with Zeta about and the fact that he is a buzzsaw in the ring and a certain world champion was ringside. And you were commenting that that certain world champion was while watching him was probably thinking to himself, I don't want none of that. None of him in the ring. Talk about the fight and talk about who was in attendance.
Yeah, so this is a venue now that's starting to host a lot of Southern California sort of local venue fights. It's the home right now of Tom Loeffler's Hollywood Fight Nights UFC Fight Pass, and it hosted over the weekend Golden Boy card. I first saw Zepeda when he fought Golden Boy's very well liked prospect and undefeated at the time, Hector Tanahara. And I didn't really know a lot about Zepeda at the time. I think he was maybe 20-0. And we thought, oh, okay, let's check this guy out. Zepeda took Tanahara apart in front of our eyes. And I could hardly believe it. Tanahara was, being destined for great things. I've seen him now again several times. I was ringside when he fought Jojo Diaz. He is a phenomenon. Fans don't know a lot about him yet outside Southern California or outside the hardcore. But he is already very well known in Mexico. He's one of those guys that, he gets stopped on the street by kids and people want to take pictures with him, want to get autographs. He lives and trains outside Mexico City. And his work rate is, along with his speed, footwork, power, it's the work rate overall that dazzles people so much. There are a lot of guys in those weight divisions that have good speed, good punching power against their weight, but no one has the relentlessness and the stamina to back it up that Zepeda seems to have. He's already set in his fights with Diaz and again in a couple of categories on Saturday, different categories of punch output records for the lightweight division. This was a 5.5 round fight. Yeah, the over under I think was 6.5. As you said, Mercito Gesta, he in a way he's been a little bit like Joet Gonzalez, good enough to stand in there with just about any title holder, not a bum, works hard, puts on a good show, just always comes up slightly short. And after Zepeda beat Jojo Diaz, everyone's surprised Gesta beat Jojo Diaz. So it teed up this matchup really nicely. And a lot of people figured Zepeda would take care of business. They weren't really sure they were going to see a beatdown like he gave him, because Gesta has always handled himself really well. All of his losses are to world champions. But Zepeda just unleashed a non-stop assault of power punches. After the 5th round, referee Jack Reese went to the corner and talked to the ringside physician and Gesta's trainer, Marvin Simodio, out of wild card, and said, he cannot let Zepeda put him on the ropes and have at him. You got to tell him to stay off the ropes and you got to show me something. And Simodio's like, yeah. And Gesta weighed in. He said, I'm okay. I'm good. So they let him go out for the 6th round, but Simodio was really keeping a close eye on him, as Reese was. And although Gesta was on his feet, he was really fading quick, and Simodio threw in the towel. And I'm glad they did. It was the right thing to do before he really got himself more seriously hurt. As it was, he took a pretty nasty gash and ended up getting stitched up backstage. So Zepeda just turned Gesta in the last round and a half of the fight into essentially a human heavy bag. I am at a loss for words, truly, watching him. He's that good. Everybody needs to get wise to him in the lightweight division, especially if, as we assume, Devin Haney drops those belts. Zepeda's going to go after him. Lopez is going to go after him. Everybody else below Haney is going to go try to get a piece of that. And sure enough, Teofimo Lopez was sitting there in Southern California ringside to watch William Zepeda and get an eyeful of him in person. In fact, he was there as a guest of Oscar De La Hoya, sitting next to Oscar. Teofimo had his young son on his knee, enjoying the fight. But I have seen him. I expected that he might comment on social media. He might post. All the postings I saw of Lopez there were being done by Golden Boy or other people who were there. I think he's gotten a look at him and thinks, if a title opportunity comes along in the division, but he's my opponent, he's going to have to think long and hard about it. Zepeda's genius is that his work rate is so high, he never gives the opponent time to think, to calculate, to strategize. How do I process the volume of punches coming at me and determine how best to come at him? I mean, Gesta did what he could. Gesta is extremely experienced, but he could only just pick and choose his spots to land something on Zepeda. And he did hit him. Zepeda is hittable. Zepeda has been knocked down once. But he could only land, a counter shot here and there. And that's just not enough. With somebody that well conditioned, he's just not going to slow him down. So, folks, keep an eye. When those belts all start being scattered to the wind, I feel very confident in saying one of them is going to end up in William Zepeda's hands.
Pressure, work rate, and he does it with a lot of power in both hands, right? You're going to have to be a really, really good boxer, or you're going to have to be a guy who has the kind of thump in your punch to keep him off. If not, he can overwhelm you with just sheer work rate and activity. Would I say that he could beat the likes of a Shakur Stevenson at 135? No. I think Stevenson has shown himself to be that good. But former undisputed champion George Kambosos won a questionable decision earlier this summer, right? If he was in a position where it was Zepeda fighting Kambosos for a vacant IBF title, Zepeda would roll right over him.
Well, and that's a fight I'd like. That's a fight I'd like to see. Funny enough, I did say that on Saturday, that of all of the guys there in the top 10 who would be willing to stand in front of him, Kambosos is one of them. The other makeable fight is someone like either Raymond Murataya or on the undercard of the top ranked card was Jermaine Ortiz. So the Lomas, the Shakurs, the Tanks, not until they have to. They don't want to fight him until he already is the guy with belts that they need to unify.
Absolutely. And on the undercard here, Gail, and Daniel indeed is having some technical issues. Hope we can have him back on the show. Have him back later on the show. If not, I hope to see him next week. On the undercard of this fight between Zepeda and Gesta, you had one of the best women's fighters in the world, Yokasta Valle, undefeated, unified champion in two weight classes, 105 and 108. She's fighting at 105 now, defended those unified strawweight belts. The easy decision over Maria Santizo. The big question after this fight is when we're going to see a matchup, a showdown between Yokasta Valle and the other unified champion at 105 pounds, Senicia Superbad Estrada. As most boxing fans know, Estrada and Valle, they've had their share of heated words over and over, be it on social media or even face-to-face. Estrada, she recently had surgery to repair damage to her right hand. Valle has already stated that she's going to return to the ring in November 4th in Costa Rica. Wrote about that for Three Kings Boxing. Thoughts on her win against Santizo, and the fight is not going to happen with Superbad this year. When is the earliest you think that fight will happen?
It's a very good performance and a very interesting comparison test. Maria Santizo, who's from Guatemala, had also fought Estrada, and Estrada knocked her out in the 4th round in 2021. So Valle wanted so badly to do the same thing, and it didn't happen. She settled for a wide decision. Scorecards were 100-90 and 99-91 twice. Valle has a really nice, hard overhand right, and she's a good counter puncher. And so Santizo was willing to stand right there and trade. But Santizo is a competitor in multiple combat sports. She is a black belt in karate. She just would not yield. She would not stand down. So Valle put on a good show. She got cut across the bridge of the nose, which was unfortunate. But Estrada recently had hand surgery. In fact, if you scroll back on her social media here a few days, she's got a pretty big cast on her arm. So I don't know what the healing process is, but you imagine that maybe 6 to 8 weeks for a cast to come off, and then she's going to have to rehab it. It's not going to happen before the beginning of next year. When Valle was asked about it, Valle said, first she needs to heal. When she heals, we'll talk. And then Valle says, and in the meantime, I got another fight already planned for November 4th in Costa Rica. So she's going to stay busy. Valle is a massive sports star in Costa Rica. She has taunted Estrada a couple of times, saying things like, well, you can sell out ballrooms, but I sell out stadiums. And she does. She could put 10,000 people in the seats. She apparently has a personal communication line to the president of Costa Rica, who text messages her before every fight to wish her good luck. So she's a superstar there. And it's a nice rivalry for Estrada. And they would like to have a unification fight. Valle has to the belts, Estrada has to the belts. So we'll get it eventually. In the meantime, good for Valle staying busy. That is the right thing to do.
Indeed. In an era where fighters love to rest on their laurels and sit on their butts until with a potential big fight looming, is really refreshing that Yoka Valle is taking what is now an old school approach, fighting as often as possible. While you're young and while you're fresh, activity is a good thing. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you ready on your toes until that big fight happens. I'm going to guess that her opponent uh, in early November, is not going to be not going to be that tough, given what's potentially down the line. So yeah, kudos to Valle on all fronts. Her performance over the weekend, and the fact that she's deciding to return to the ring pretty soon. Let's move on to some fights that's happened earlier today, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Gail and I were able to watch these two fights happening that took place in Tokyo. I'm going to get into the discussion here. I'm not going to put all the recaps on Gail, right? Headline of this bout, headline of the card that took place in Tokyo. You took place live for particularly the United States audience on ESPN Plus. Shout out to Jamel Herring, who's former junior lightweight champion, and Jamel Herring. Both of us have had the pleasure of chopping it up with him privately on Zoom. Part of the broadcast team for ESPN Plus. Um, Headliner was Kenshiro Teraji defending his unified 108-pound titles against Hekkie Budler. We will talk about that in a bit. But on the undercard, had a bout between Junto Nakatani, who is reigning WBO champion at 115. His last outing was just a sensational highlight reel 12th round knockout over Andrew Maloney, I believe it was, on the undercard of Haney and Lomachenko. Fought a voluntary defense against Argi, Cortes, Gale, and Nakatani. He got the win here by wide margin, but that is not indicative, in my opinion, of how the bout went. I covered this for Three Kings Boxing. Yes, Nakatani controlled most of the action. Yes, he put Cortes down 3 times, twice in the 5th round by way of body shots, put him down again in the 9th round by way of a body shot, right? But there were moments in this fight where RG Cortes, who, if, for followers of the lower divisions, Cortes is the guy who gave, who was Juan Francisco Estrada's, who fought Juan Francisco Estrada in 2022, gave Gallo Estrada a tough go of it. Cortes in the 6th round caught Nakatani on the button with the right hand, and for the first time, Gail, I saw Nakatani hurt. He was on the move the last minute of that round. That first time I've seen him hit, hurt, and made him and forced him to fight backwards. He eventually recovered and was able to control pretty much the rest of the bout. But I found it interesting that in this fight, Cortes was able to land on the defending champ, and he was able to hurt him. Overall, a good win, but for one of the few times in Nakatani's career, he was made to fight. And kudos to Cortes. He stayed there until the end. Nakatani tried to take him out at the end, but Cortes shown himself to be very competent, tough guy. And up next for Nakatani is probably a title defense against number 1 contender, former 3-time champion, 3-division champion, Kosei Tanaka, in early 2024, right? And that's a fight I really want to see. Many people remember Tanaka for the way he was destroyed by Ioka, but Ioka was really on his game that night. And despite how Tanaka looked in the fight against Ioka, don't be foolish to think that this dude cannot fight. From an offensive perspective, Kosei Tanaka, one of the best fighters, not just in the lower weight divisions, but one of the best fighters in the sport. Speed, power, can box, can punch, can fight moving forward, can fight moving backwards. Again, he just fought up against Ioka, who put up arguably the best performance in his career. And he has the skill set he has the weaponry to give Junto Nakatani plenty of problems. Um, it's a fight I would love to see. It's a fight I definitely love to see. The main event, of course, was Kenshiro Teraji fighting Hekkie Budler. Hekkie Budler, former two division champion, 105, 108, former unified champion at 108 pounds. And interesting, Budler, he tried to he did some nice things in the early rounds, right? Tried to stay away from Teraji's vaunted right hand, tried to go to the body of Teraji in the early rounds. But over time, Gail, to me, the size and the power of Kenshiro Teraji really started to come to the forefront. By the middle rounds, I felt that Budler was slowing down. And ultimately, it was the body work of Kenshiro that proved Butler's undoing, stopped him in round. Overall, given who he fought, given the way he ended the fight, fairly impressive performance.
Yeah, Budler decided he was going to come right at him from the
Right.
opening bell, and he was successful early. It took Kenshiro a little bit of time to catch up with the pace. There was, not any need to do that, as it turned out. And Kenshiro, he can match the output with the power. Budler is the busier fighter. But once Kenshiro Teraji sort of got into his rhythm, got past getting cut over the right eye, I think in the 5th round, he started finding the sweet spot in his punches and started being able to land both upstairs and downstairs in combination when they were exchanging as the rounds went on. He was still catching punches from Budler, which made it a really fun fight to watch. But it all caught up with Budler, unfortunately. And by round 8, Kenshiro was just swarming him, and he just overwhelmed him along the ropes in the 9th round, and it was stopped at that point. It was a good stoppage. There was no reason to watch Budler take 3 more rounds of that sort of punishment. It was really starting to roll up. He fought well. He gave it his best, making it a great fight to watch, a lot of fun. But Teraji is just the better fighter, and the outcome, maybe the timing of it was a surprise, but the end result, another stoppage win, that part wasn't as much of a surprise.
Absolutely. And Taraji's been on quite a roll since suffering this first loss of his career back nearly a year ago now, around a year ago, against Yabuki.
Yeah.
Defeated Yabuki in the rematch. And no, correction. That fight, that rematch, that first fight against that loss to Yabuki was almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, September 22nd, 2021. Time flies, but
there you go.
Sometimes, but he avenged that loss in his very next fight in the rematch, and then some. He knocked him out in the 3rd round, and sometimes it's that sort of loss in a fighter's career that sort of literally slaps them upside the head and gets them to make whatever mindset adjustments or training adjustments are necessary. And you're right, he has been on a roll since.
Yeah, all of his wins has been by stoppage. The rematch with Yabuki followed that up with a dominant performance to become unified champion against Koiguchi, stopped him in 7th. His last fight up until the fight against Budler was a stoppage win. And now he has a stoppage win against Budler. And after the fight, he said he hopes that his next fight is another unification contest. All signs are pointing towards that being against Jonathan Gonzalez, who's the WBO champion. They've been talking about that fight for nearly a year now. I think Gonzalez has an upcoming title defense either in October or November. I can't remember the exact date. in the hope from team Teraji is that they can finally make the unification bout between him and Gonzalez first quarter of 2024. Let's go on to some news here. And arguably the most memorable fight of this year was Terence Crawford's this is not hyperbole, destruction of Errol Spence in July to become undisputed champion at 147. Spence has a rematch clause. Word on the street, he's activated that rematch clause after Crawford stopped Spence. He said that he's willing to fight Spence in a rematch at 154 pounds. Well, during the time off from last episode to the this present recording, it seems like that Bud Gill has had a change of heart, and now word on the street is that Bud wants the rematch to happen either at 147, 148. Uh, it's no secret that Spence has major issues getting down to 147 pounds. What do you make of it that Crawford, uh, it seems, is saying to Spence that he must come down again in weight in order to get a second fight with him? I know there's been a lot of pushback against this decision, supposed decision by Bud. Your reaction to this, Gail?
I'm not sure why the pushback. I, truly, I can't explain why people are so worked up over it. Terence Crawford is now the A side, firmly the A side. A sides get to dictate terms. That's how it works. That's how it's always been. And in Bud's case, even when he became a unified champion, even when he's held titles on his way up, you know, he may have in theory been the A side, but he wasn't always treated that way. He wasn't always afforded that kind of respect. He finally has it. Why wouldn't he take it out for a spin? He'd be nuts not to. And clearly, rematching at exactly the same weight, or, if he's willing to do a little bit of a catch weight, that's probably his one concession. He knows Spence struggles to get down to weight. He knows that. Why wouldn't he leverage that advantage for himself? This isn't, you're not expected to make it as easy and fair on your opponent as possible, as even-handed terms. No, you want to get every advantage you can, psychological, physical, whatever it is. So, Spence is free to say no and move on if he doesn't want it. They agreed in the original contract that whoever won the fight, the loser got to decide whether or not he wanted a rematch. So that fell on Spence. He has indicated that by all reports, he wants a rematch. The winner gets to decide in what weight division. That's in writing. That's in the legal contract. Why are fans upset about both fighters following the terms of the contract they agreed to before they fought? I can only imagine it's because Spence's fans assumed he would win. Well, he didn't. And he needs to abide by the terms of the contract. And that's the only decision that's to be made. If he wants the rematch, he has to find out where Bud Crawford wants it to take place, and then he's got a big decision to make from there. And it's either, okay, I accept your terms, or no, I don't. It's really that simple.
I see you back, Daniel. We're talking the news breaking word on the street is that Crawford is saying for a rematch with Spence, he wants it to happen at 147, 148 pounds, right? Bud has received a lot of pushback from this. Your reaction to the fact that even though Crawford after the win in July said he would have no problem and fighting a rematch with Spence at 154, he's now having an apparent change of heart.
And we lost Daniel
Oh, lost him again.
just before
Wow.
he could weigh in. You're killing us,
Wow.
Daniel. Daniel, put your thoughts in the comment section if you absolutely have to. Yeah.
Let's see if we can. Were you
There
able to
we
hear
go.
part of my question, Daniel?
No, I heard it. I just accidentally pressed the back button
Okay.
because StreamYard is doing doing that weird thing again where if I try to log in when driving, it cuts off my internet. But now that I'm home, this is the situation, unfortunately. When actually no, not unfortunately. Bud won the fight. He can dictate the terms of how he wants the rematch to be. And yeah, he said he was fine doing it at 154. Didn't mean it was a guarantee for 154. He never once said like I will only do that fight at 154. And quite honestly, I actually like that he's doing this because he's doing the one thing that bothered me when he became undisputed at 140 was he never defended those belts at least once as undisputed champion. He won them, he got the accolade, and then he moved up to welterweight. This time around, luckily, he's at least defending it. And folks, and I know there's going to be a good amount of Spence fans probably listening to this. The argument that Errol Spence would beat Crawford at 154, we just saw, is as asinine as the argument Pacquiao fans made in 20 when after he fought Floyd, where they said, "Oh, if Floyd would have fought Manny 2010, he would have won because his speed would have been better. Floyd's defense would have been that much sharper too. You would have had the same fight, just probably a little bit more aesthetically pleasing." This is the same situation. Yeah, Spence will be a little stronger, doesn't have to do as much weight cutting in 154, but guess what? Neither does Bud. And Bud is a really strong individual. And you're letting him keep more weight? You get people gotta remember this wasn't a war. We all expected it to be a war. We all expected it to be back and forth, thrilling action, and instead it was literally Terence Crawford playing with Errol Spence like he was a toy. Moving up to 154 is not going to change that. So if anything, this can actually be a blessing in disguise for Spence because, when I said it after the fight, I'm still taking to it. If there were enough good people around Errol Spence, they would walk away from this. They would tell him not to take the rematch. Maybe this is the opportunity, the second chance for them to say, you know what? You don't really need this fight because you're not going to win the rematch. Remember, it isn't a situation like we saw with Eubanks and Liam Smith where a lucky punch got in. No. We saw a full and detailed breakdown of Errol Spence done by Terence Crawford. So, of course, he should dictate where he wants the weight classes to it. It's the situations. This situation is different from the Bivol Canelo situation because Canelo feels he had enough clout where he could still dictate the terms even as the loser. Bud has gained a lot of clout, a lot of good press from this. His profiles are a lot larger now than what it was before the fight. He has enough cachet to say, I can have the fight at whatever weight class I deem fit. And good on him.
He has the power to make those decisions now, and he's taking advantage of it. As Gail said, he's the 8 side now. Do I wish they would fight at 154 pounds? Yeah, because I think Spence would be a lot more comfortable from a physical standpoint at the higher weight. But will you have the power? Yeah, it's Bud's prerogative to request that a second fight happen at 147 pounds on that welterweight range. It's part of the contract. Can't get mad at it now. That's what Spence negotiated, and he's uh um he's bound for the time being to what Bud wants. Those are the rules, right? So fans who are mad at it can't get mad at him for doing it. You can't. You just can't. You can't. You can't. Going back to you, Dan, give you an opportunity while you're here to give your thoughts on a couple of fights before we begin before we hit the preview segment. Um, Luis Alberto Lopez, his win over Joet Gonzalez to retain the IBF featherweight title.
Oh, that was not exactly a fun fight to see as far as styles goes, unfortunately, because Lopez made it a point to hit Gonzalez low a good amount throughout the fight. And not a lot of it was caught, unfortunately, by, we all know the referee. We all know Lawrence Cole. Unfortunately, it is Texas. And that took off, unfortunately, a bit of the cachet of winning what was a very interesting fight, entertaining fight, because Gonzalez was actually doing good. He was landing the better punches. He was establishing win generalship more, but as started going in, unfortunately, Lopez started hitting a little low, and it derailed the momentum enough for him to win. And by the way, the scorecards were just absolute garbage. Absolute garbage.
On the undercard, you had Xander Zayas, impressive win, in our opinion, Gail's and in the opinion of Gail and myself, impressive stoppage win over Valenzuela.
I caught the highlights of it. It's a good fight. It's actually a good barometer of how Xander is actually stepping up. Hope that luckily means he's not hitting, or what we probably would like to call now, the Berlanga plateau, where he's only hitting a certain skill level and now he's not improving. No, he's showing that he's willing to improve. He's willing to get better at this. The fight was very impressive. He handled it very well. And hopefully it means that he'll be more ready to actually get better challenges and mainly get into a title picture soon.
Were you able to catch the world title fights over in Japan earlier this morning between Nakatani and Cortes, Teraji and Budler? If so, your quick thoughts, please.
Unfortunately, I missed the Nakatani fight, but I did catch Kenshiro and Hekkie Budler. Hekkie Budler he's always been one of like my little favorite underdog fighters. He doesn't have a lot of pop, but he'll come in waves. But unfortunately for him, Kenshiro was sharper, had faster hands, had better reflexes, and focused on the body throughout. And it focused enough where it made Budler gun shy. And just the barrage that Kenshiro threw at him to have him start the fight by TKO. That kid is ready. That kid wants that spotlight. And it's probably looking like he's clearly aiming for New Year's Eve in Japan.
Indeed, indeed. Let's get to some preview some of the fights that's going to happen this weekend. I'm going back to you, Daniel. Last time we saw Jessica McCaskill in the ring, she was on the losing end against Chantel Cameron at 140 pounds. She's going back up to 147, fighting a unification bout against Sandy Ryan. If the McCaskill who we saw in the two fights with Breaker shows up, I think she can win this fight rather comfortably against Ryan. No disrespect to Ryan, who is a world champion. But if the McCaskill who looked a bit off in her loss to Chantel Cameron shows up, Ryan could give her a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, this is going to be the fight to see whether her going down to 140 was more of an issue rather than the skill of Chantal Cameron, because we've seen what Chantal Cameron can do. We have seen what she can do since she beat McCaskill. So this is a good barometer to see, okay, you're back more in your natural weight class. You're back to doing the routines that you need to. You don't have to worry about the extra weight cut that you needed to in the last fight with Cameron. So she should be able to do fairly well because, granted, it is the welterweight. She still can be considered the class in that division. And
Even
unless
over
it's,
Jonas, I don't know about that.
like I said, can be. I'm not saying she is. But that's the problem. We need to see how she looks at 147. We know what she looks at 140, which was not the best thing for her. But if she's able to bounce off well and she wins this fight, maybe we get that question answered then with her and Jonas, which, like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing it all.
This is on the undercard, Gail, of junior welterweight battle between Richardson, Hitchins, and Jose Zepeda. Zepeda has been a perennial guy at 135 and 140. We remember his fight against Jose Ramirez, title fight against Jose Ramirez. A lot of people felt that he beat Ramirez when they fought a few years back. Zepeda, of course, I believe his last bout was the loss to Progress for the vacant WBC belt at 140. I like Hitchins a lot. I was a little bit upset that that fight wasn't finalized between Hitchins and Love. Montana Love, I thought that Hitchins, and I still think that Hitchins would beat Montana Love, but he gets the fight against Zepeda, and this is a kind of show me what you got situations with him, Hitchins. I think he's talented, but he's facing a good test in Zepeda. I think he has the talent to beat Zepeda. If he does, I think he takes his career to another level at 140.
Oh yeah, you and I are thinking exactly alike about this. Yeah. Eye test. Hitchens absolutely passes the eye test. Looks good. Young, exciting star. After he was in the 2016 Olympics, he actually represented Haiti. He's been a pro ever since. He's still only 25. He has 7 knockouts, including in his last fight. And there's a lot of buzz about him. But I still have those same doubts I think you do. Can he kick it up to the next level? And Zepeda is the perfect opponent to test him. Tough as nails. One of those guys willing to take 2 punches to land one. He's got significant power. He's lost some key fights. He lost against Regis Prograis, but he's had a win since then, and has had some incredible fights. One of his other losses was certainly no shame when he fought Jose Ramirez in 2019 at super lightweight. So Hitchins is going to need to be careful. He can get hit. He's got it. It's one of those things where he should have the superior skills, but work rate is going to be important, and he can't make a mistake because Zepeda does have one punch knockout power if he catches Hitchins. So he can't let that happen. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles it. Is he going to default to more of a careful fight? Is he going to try to box him? Or is he going to circle around, see what he's got to offer, test him, and then bang with him? Don't really know. So it truly is a little bit of a mystery to me. I'm just not sure what we're seeing in the eye test is quite real yet. This fight will let us know. And I think that's why so many people are talking it up, very interested in it, to see what he's got. And Daniel, how about you? What do you think of Hitchins and his skill set? Proven, unproven? Think it's the real deal?
This is the fight to do it. Because I had that question too. Like, okay, it's there. We can tell some of it is there, but we always know there can always be a roadblock. It can always be a certain a fighter that comes in, and unfortunately, they takes it out the rails. So Zepeda's that type of fighter. I don't know what's it about that last name. Makes fighters just literally eat punches in order to land their own.
Yeah,
But
isn't that true? It really is true.
Yeah, that last name, man, Zepeda es un apellido peligroso. But the main thing we have to be is can Hitchins' skill set withstand the fact that okay, you have a guy willing to eat your punches to land his own? Because if you're willing to take on that type of brawler, then you have a very, very good shot then at making yourself a name in the division. Because that's going to be the test. Is he going to be wary of the fact that, okay, I'm landing punches, but this guy keeps coming? Because that's something that can mentally break a fighter. We've seen it. And unfortunately, we've seen also the results of fighters that can't. Considering we had one literally become a meme again by going after McDonald's workers. But we'll leave it at that.
Oh, who are you talking about? I wouldn't know. Yeah, and Hitchins also needs to decide whether the victory is more important than impressing the fans. Here's Zepeda with several losses, and yet he's always someone everyone wants to see. He's always an opponent, that's sought out because fans love him. Fans love the style. There've been a lot of fighters through history that, once they retired, there were plenty of losses on their record, but they were never, ever in a dull fight. They were always, always willing to bring it, even if it wasn't in their best interests. Hitchins needs to figure out what lane he wants to be in with this fight. And he truly, whatever he does decide, it's still not going to matter at all if he makes a mistake. I don't think he is going to bang with Zepeda. I think he's going to try to box him. He might fail and have to go to plan B. And I'm just still so unsure about his skill set. I really am. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. The outcome will tell us a lot about what his future is. And he could potentially be part of this next generation of welterweights and super welterweights. And Michael, are you successfully back with us?
I'm dealing with a bit of an emergency right now. Could you do your best and finish with the
we will
docket
finish
and
things
fight,
off.
and I'll just end things when you're done.
Daniel and I never lack for the ability to chat it up. So one of the other fights this weekend, a little earlier in your afternoon on Saturday, via Matchroom Boxing, this kind of came up quickly for me. It seemed like it is happening faster than I expected. We are going to get to see a rematch between Chinese heavyweight Zhilei Zhang and Joyce of Great Britain. As you might recall, the pair squared off. I got to even check the date of the original fight. And while they were a fairly even match odds-wise, it was a bit of a surprise when Zhang pretty much battered Joyce down, left him pretty bloodied up and beat up, and suddenly staring at a loss. So they've decided to have a rematch. Daniel, do you think it's going to be repeat or revenge?
This is going to be the fight of the weekend for me. This is the one that I have circled on the calendar because we have to remember how Zhilei Zhang looked in him because this is a two fight performance where he's been the goods and he's gotten different results from it. We have to remember how he fought against Hrgović, and you on the losing side of that one. And in the first fight with Joyce, he decided not to fully leave it like that in the judge's hands, even though technically it almost did.
And,
But
and what did you think he beat Hrgović or no?
yeah,
Yep, I did too. I thought he won that fight. I hate to trot out the words that all the crazies like to use, like robbery, but he deserved the win. And
yeah,
I think a lot of the boxing world, especially seeing Hrgovic's last performance, which was not good, are even more convinced that Zhang should have prevailed in that fight. And you're right. He got a chance to prove everybody, prove them right about him and prove the judges wrong. He really did leverage a beatdown of Joyce.
yeah. The thing that makes it interesting is it was the jab. It wasn't a situation where he tried to go rock'em sock'em. He just hit Joyce with the very thing that he uses against his opponent, which is a jab, a very strong southpaw jab. And ultimately, it wore Joyce down. And Joyce, up to that point, is a fighter you can tell he's country strong and country tough. But eventually, you're going to meet somebody that can out tough you. And that may be the case for Joyce. Now, when it comes to Joyce, he has to vary the attack. Because, yeah, Zhang hit him with the body, but we also have to look. Zhang does have a little bit of a soft underbelly. And that has to be a point of attack for Joyce. If he's going to wear Zhang down, if he's going to be able to slow the pace to where he's able to control the fight, and then ultimately then through his own war of attrition, try to win it out that way. Because otherwise, Zhang is just going to keep popping off that jab. And unless Joyce really focuses on head movement, you're not gonna have, unfortunately, a bit of revenge. The thing is, I like Joyce too. Like he's a fighter that has proven a lot of people wrong in the lead up to the Zhang fight. We all remember not as many people gave him a chance against Daniel Dubois as before we should have in hindsight, because he is an older heavyweight. He is an older heavyweight, not a lot of amateur experience. And ultimately, we saw what he did to Dubois, and I think that's still affecting Dubois even to this day, even with that fight with Usyk. And now he's facing the same struggle. Yeah, he's facing that same struggle now with having somebody that may have your number in Zhang, but he has to put that aside and he has to see what adjustments can he make. Like, to me, he has to focus on the body, wear Zhang down to where the point where your punches land a little bit better than what they did last time, and don't allow Zhang to establish a jab. If Zhang establishes the jab within the first 3 rounds, we just have a repeat of the first fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Joyce might have been able to continue if he didn't have, a bloody pulp where his right eye used to be in the side of his face because of that jab in the last fight. Went 6 rounds. If I'm Zhang, I go right back after that same eye with the same jab. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In fact, just step on the gas even harder. Joyce sort of fights like a bad old movie version of the Frankenstein monster. He just sort of lurches and comes at you. He's so physically imposing and has enough power and stamina to make it work for him. It's just an odd awkward individual style. Joyce is 38, but Zhang is 40. Talk about a late bloomer. Damn. We're going to have a combined age of 78 years this weekend in that fight. I mean, you would only see that sort of combination of ages if Bernard Hopkins in the later part of his career was in the ring with somebody who could be his son. So it is going to be fascinating. I think it will be, I think they will go more rounds, as you know, and it supposes that Joyce avoids the same sort of damage that he suffered in the first fight. But I think in the end, the result will be the same. I think Zhang will win. And, talk about a late career surge. 40 years old, sort of this also ran sort of novelty heavyweight from China, very, very unusual to see a guy that big from an Asian nation. I mean, just not, just not sort of a normal thing. And with, the interest for an Asian audience in seeing a big man from, the biggest Asian country on the planet, he's an important figure in a lot of ways. And for him to have hung in there, kept at it, keep taking these fights, keep winning, it's hard not to root for him at this point, even after he was long forgotten by a lot of fans because of the flashier heavyweights out there, the Tyson Furies, the Deontay Wilders, the Anthony Joshuas. Outside of Fury and Usyk, and maybe Wilder, just because of that relentless punching power, I think that anyone else might find Zhang pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, we'll put it this way: the barometer for British fans, I would not put Zhang against Anthony Joshua.
No, I wouldn't either.
No.
I think Joshua, he's not right in the head. There's no other way to say it. He's damaged. The tools are there. His heart's not in it anymore. It's just not. He is still in boxing because he can make a ton of money. I do think part of him enjoys the attention, but the tension between the fame and the money and his desire ebbing away to really do the work and risk what you've got to at any level when you're a heavyweight in particular, I think is a very, very heavy burden on him. And you can almost see that weight being carried around on his shoulders. So I don't know that we're going to see Joshua in the ring save one last big money fight with somebody. I think he'll call it a career at that point.
Yeah, and that's the other key when it comes to this fight. It's a little bit of a measure of national pride for the UK because we have to look at it. They at one point had a good crop of 3 or 4 good fighters that were world caliber. But now we have to look at all those fighters today. But mentioned Joshua is more than likely Usyk unfortunately beat the desire out of him, looks to be. Daniel Dubois, Joyce pretty much in the way that he won, probably put a mental block in his head where if he comes to a certain point of adversity, he's gonna falter, even in cases where you feel like he may have a better shot than what he thought. Well, like we already know Dylan White's already wasted. Dave Allen's only a domestic fighter. So Joyce, in many ways, is the main light, the little lighthouse in the what's become a sea of darkness for UK heavyweights. Because unfortunately, I'm not going to count Fury. I'm sorry. Once you've proven that you will not fight Usyk simply because you know he can't beat Usyk, you're out of the discussion. You're out of the discussion, and it'll be more permanent once Mauricio gets the gumption to strip him. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, Joyce probably is the main light of the day, and you're facing somebody in Zhang, like you mentioned, a nation country where somebody of that size and close to that height normally gets thrown not towards boxing, towards basketball. And to see somebody succeed in boxing that well, like I said, in a place where they're not really known for a lot of their fighters. We know what happened with the Hands of Gold in that area, but this is, like I said, the chance of national pride for both in many ways. One country is trying to, like I said, trying to regain a little bit of limelight. The other country is trying to get out of the normal stereotype of that they don't produce goods when it comes to boxing.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how the fortunes of British boxing at the heavyweight division have risen and fallen so quickly. You know, you did have there for a while Fury, White, Chisora, Daniel Dubois on the rise, Joe Joyce on the rise, obviously Tyson Fury. And that generation is passing out into retirement. Fraser Clark, their Olympic medalist, is still, very young in his pro career, even though he's 32. He only has 8 fights. And I like the looks of Johnny Fisher. He's a very everyman, working class sort of guy. What's on his side is that he's only 24 with an undefeated 10-0 record, 9 knockouts. He's still very rough around the edges, but he's very fan friendly, kind of a great white hope kind of guy. He's performed well in his last few fights. He's been getting the right kind of opponents in front of him. It's still too early to tell what kind of promise he has. I think Dubois is done. Luckily, the Dubois family has Caroline, who seems to be the real talent in the Dubois boxing family. But British fans, due respect to them. They love their boxing. They're, as a nation, much more passionate than Americans are anymore. They support their fighters. They'll find somebody and they'll get behind them. And that can give you just that extra little percentage motivation. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, and I think this is a very under the radar fight considering it's heavyweights. It's the usual issue of no Americans involved. Or Mexicans for that matter. But folks don't sleep on it. The first fight was a surprise. The second fight, there's a lot of drama involved. Michael, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back. My apologies. I'm dealing with a bit of a family crisis here. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to
done, but we want to have your say on this heavyweight rematch. Rematch or revenge. Repeat or revenge is the theme of the end of the show there.
I'll do it as quickly as possible. I think it'll be repeat for Zhang. Too many defensive liabilities on the behalf of Joyce, who fights like a fighter from the 1800s instead of a fighter for 2023. He's nicknamed Juggernaut for a reason. There's not much variety in this game, and I just don't think he can avoid the jab and the left hand of Zhilei Zhang. I don't know if he'll stop him, but if Zhang is in shape and doesn't get old on the night, I'm going with him to win the rematch.
And we're having a little bit of audio issues there.
Once again, and my apologies. I'm dealing with who are in need of a good PR person, or for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
And before we leave, just to remind you all, ESPN Plus will air Zhang Joyce too. If you're wondering where you can see it, ESPN Plus, and you find me on nyfights.com. It's that easy.
And I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Oh yes, folks. You can still, as long as it's still up, you can still find me at Twitter, Ruckus99 or KWZ99. But I do have Threads Cam, I do have Mastodon, just in case, because Elon's hell bent on killing this site. So we had to see.
For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, because I refuse to call it X. Brother JR at Brother JR76 for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance, and check out my sense of the day. You can check me out on IG and TikTok, Brother JRSC. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will do a recap of the rematch between Zhilei Zhang and Joyce. Anthony Yard is going to fight on this undercard, so we may dive into that as well. And we will do have a recap of Richardson, Hitchins, and Zepeda, McCaskill, Sandy Ryan, and full scale in depth preview of the showdown between undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez and undisputed 154-pound champion Jamel Charlo on the undercard of Alvarez and Charlo. Jose Ramos Jr. going to fight Erickson Lubin, and a key 154-pound battle and return of Yordenis Ugas, who's going to fight Mario Barrios. So we'll talk about that fight as well. So yeah, we'll talk about that fight as well as the finally Jai Apatai, IBF cruiserweight champion, makes his first defense of the belt against Jordan Thompson. On the undercard of that, Ellie Scotney is going to defend her IBF 122-pound battle. 122-pound title, excuse me. So we will talk about all of those fights. Again, my apologies for the abrupt silence on my part. So for Gail from that's Community Digital News, that's a former writing spot for Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from Ford Boxing News and the Inscriber. This has been episode 420 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good evening. Good night.